Welcome to the Crit House, everybody. I'm Jeff Larson, and we're going to try something a little bit different today on the Crit House. We still have two reviewers who are with us, two esteemed and very impressive folks. Thomas Jackson is here with us. He is a fine art photographer. When he started out in New York, he was an editor and a book reviewer early in his career. And then when he started taking to photography, he was a street photographer, a la Gary Winogrand, doing street scenes, moved on to landscapes, and finally he is now doing the installation work that he does today. His photography has been shown around the world. He was in the Critical Mass Top 50, and he won the Installation Still Life category in PDN's the Curator Award back in 2013. Thomas, it's great to have you with us here. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And Jane Szabo is here with us as well. She is also a very impressive photographer. She is a conceptual artist based in Los Angeles. She has a background in creating props and miniatures and set construction for the film and amusement industry. And her work has also been exhibited around the world in museums and is in private collections as well. And she's been published in a variety of places, including the Huffington Post and Lens Scratch and a bunch more. So Jane, welcome to the Crit House.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So what is different about what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about critique and your experience with critique and what is important with critique, but also we may be showing a little of my work as well to sort of work us through that process. And one of the things that I haven't really talked about an awful lot on this program is I started this program because I spent a lot of time taking pictures, but not getting feedback from anyone. The pictures I took ended up in boxes or on a hard drive. And it really wasn't until I started talking to people like you, who could tell me a little bit about my work and give input. It wasn't until I started having those conversations that I started to grow as a photographer. But so what's your experience? Jane, start. You must show your work to people and get their input before you're in a process. Is that something you do, or what's your history with that?
Definitely. I have a long history of participating in crit groups. It brings to mind when I was an undergraduate in a painting class. And I think we had meetings, the group meeting about the work. And I asked out loud, I'm like, how do I know if it's any good? And I realized that is what a crit group is about, is like learning the context for your work. I didn't have a clue at that age where my work fit in the art world and its context and if the work was effective or not. A crit group is a staple of art school. And it's also something, or a critique, I should say, the critique of the work is the staple of art school and is something that I've taken onward for, the last 10 years I've been participating. I've gone back into crit groups and either crit groups that were hosted through arts organizations or just a group of my peers. And right now I'm in one and we meet, every 2 weeks and we just look at somebody else's work and we have a formal conversation. And I realize it's doing two things for me. It's not only just 95% of the time you're talking about somebody else's work, but you're learning how to see other work. You're learning how to understand what you're seeing. And what I really enjoy about these types of meetings is it's very similar to how you see work in the gallery. You may come in and see work and have no explanation of what you're going to see. And the viewer looking in the crit group needs to see the work and come up with an explanation and interpretation of what we're looking at. And that's such a valuable insight for the artist to hear. Are they getting my ideas? Is what I'm trying to do coming across? And for me, the most important part about making work is having an intention and knowing what your ideas are behind it. And the value of a crit group is to understand, are my ideas coming across? And with good feedback, you can see where you're maybe falling short and maybe get some guidance and direction of how to expand the work to make it more effective. So to me, it's an incredibly valuable process.
Yeah, but it's hard. I mean, because people tell you, yeah, this doesn't work, and you think this thing is great. But so Thomas, I mean, do you operate completely alone, or I mean, do you I mean, you've been through phases of photography where you were doing street and landscape, and now the installation pieces. How do you know
Well,
that's good?
unlike Jane, I actually have limited experience with critiques, um, and but I'll get to how positive I think they are. But I mean, I had some critiques when I was an undergraduate. You know, I did a painting class, and I have a vivid memory of a critique where David Bowie's very eccentric son, who was in my class, had done a painting of his like Welsh ancestor who who fought in battle completely nude, because the more accomplished you were in battle, the more naked you would be. So that's my first memory of an art critique. But even those were really interesting. But I sort of started doing what I was doing kind of in a vacuum, like you, where I had this whole other career. I was working in publishing in New York, and I was kind of bored, and I just picked up a camera and started taking pictures, and I loved it, but I didn't have a lot of feedback. Luckily, I had some friends who were working photographers or who worked in the photography world, so they sort of gave me informal feedback, and they gave me advice, and to me, I think that's really been the main form of critique that I've had, is just talking to friends. But it's amazing to me how just one incisive comment that someone can make can completely change the direction of what you're doing for the better. I mean, it really is invaluable to get other people's feedback.
It sounds like you have something in mind about that.
You'll just keep in your tight little spiral, and never, you know, reach escape velocity.
Is there something? Is there like a comment that somebody made to you specifically that said, "I'm going this way"?
There is. I mean, it's very. I mean, it's sort of process oriented. But when I first started doing the kind of setup installation work I'm doing now, because I didn't have a sense that there was any other way to do it, I was relying pretty heavily on post-production, on Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would put things up in the air that were held up by stuff, and then I would just erase whatever was holding it up in post-production. And I showed it to a fellow photographer, and he's like, "I love this work, but wouldn't it be cool if it was just real?" And that was all he said. And that just completely changed my entire trajectory. And I spent the next, I don't know how many years, coming up with all these processes and techniques to make my work in camera, and to involve zero post-production or retouching.
So you said something, that's a great story, by the way. You said something that I think resonated a little bit, is that, I mean, we talk about like critique as being like this formal, you know, you have a crit group and you come together. A lot of times it's just a question of showing your work to some people and seeing and feeling their reaction. You know, not on I mean, Instagram's fine, but because people will say, but I mean, being able to show it to somebody that you trust and say, you know, what do you think about this? It doesn't have to be like a formal education, you know, in school crit group. I think those are the things that have been the most instructional to me, is just showing to people and seeing how they react.
Yeah, but I think there's definitely something different about being in a specific crit context.
Yep.
Because if you're just showing it to your friends, you know, they don't want to bum you out. You know, they're probably gonna say something positive, or they're gonna err on the positive side. And you know, I think one of the problems with being out on your own is that, and not putting yourself in situations where people are critiquing your work, is that if people don't like what they see, they'll just be silent. The only thing you'll ever hear is when people like it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't get you anywhere. You know, it doesn't move you out of the rut that you might be in, you know. So I think it is really important. And if you're not, even if you're not in specific, you know, formal context, I think you need to find people who can really be thoughtful and honest with you.
It's like you have to come to the table at a crit with the understanding that your feelings may get a little bit hurt, and that you have to separate your work from your emotions somehow.
Well, and that's the hard part, because I think especially, or maybe not especially, but with like new photographers, people who have not been through the education process and done critique, what they do is very personal to them. It's hard to have somebody say, I don't know, I don't, for whatever reason, whether it's composition or timing or lighting or something, it doesn't work for them. That's hard to do.
Yeah, and I think it's a generalization to say, but there's some truth to it, that the younger you are, the harder it is for you. I mean, I think when you get a little bit older, you're just a little bit more comfortable in your skin, a little bit more confident, perhaps, that you can handle it more. But I remember how much harder it used to be for me personally, at least, to receive criticism than it is now. Now it's like, I'm thirsty for it. Like, please give me something that I can use that will help me, move forward and break free from whatever rut I feel like I'm in.
Totally agree. Totally agree. It's like, when I go to even portfolio reviews, if, sure, you're looking for opportunity, but if you just say, that's nice, it's like, you're not helping me at all. And there's a couple of reviewers out there who have reputations for just being mean and making people cry. And I'm like, oh, they're my favorite ones, because they really get to the meat. They're not afraid to, tell you the truth. And I think that's something that's so important.
So I actually talk about portfolio reviews a little bit, because so when I have done one portfolio review, and I went with the idea that I wanted to hear what input and harsh criticism for the work that I was showing, and I got it. But I know a lot of people go to that because they're trying to use it as networking and to find jobs. I mean, is that if they're, I guess it depends on the portfolio review. But so what's your experience with that?
It's both. I think for me, it's like, I will go to the table and I may go, I'll know what I'm bringing. Maybe I bring 3 projects. 2 of them are complete. I don't need to hear any feedback on it, because I'm not going to go back and change the work. That work was done 2 or 3 years ago. But this new body of work, I'm in the middle of, and I have ideas, and then I'll be very clear. These first 2 are done, meaning I just want you to see it. This one is new, and I'm exploring these different ideas, and you come to the table with very clear an explanation to your review, what you want out of that review, and isolate, this is the project I would like feedback on. Because if they tell me to, reshoot this entire body of work, it's like, I finished that 2 years ago. I'm not going to go back to it. Yeah. But I let them know, here's where I need the help.
Thomas, have you done portfolio reviews?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I haven't done many, but I did do the Photo Alliance portfolio review in San Francisco, like in 2014 or something. And I mean, I made a lot of friendships there, and a lot of important relationships were formed on that 2-day event. And my ego was bruised at the same time. I mean, like one gallerist said the words to me, "I'm not buying it," which is not that she wasn't going to pay for it, but she wasn't buying it. Oh. And I don't even remember what her follow-up to that was, but it was the I'm not buying it that stuck in my head. And then there was a whole like a subsequent thing where everyone put their work on a table and they invited the public and people would come, and it was wonderful to talk to people about the work, but it wasn't a formal conversations thing. So like I would see people come in and look at my work for a second and then literally like this. And that was a guy who I know, like, as like, classic, Ansel Adams kind of, aftermarket, secondary market stuff. It wasn't his thing. So, but that goes back to what I was saying before about how, you know, if you're not in a formal critique situation, people will only say nice things. If they have not nice things to say, they just won't say anything at all, and you'll be in the cold. But overall, I'd say that that experience was extremely positive for me.
What do you, just like one last question. So what do you think about on the other side when you're giving feedback? Like what should you be thinking about? Because that's important too, to think about not only how do you receive the, but I mean, how do you look at work and give somebody feedback? What's the best way to do that? What should you be thinking about when you're talking to somebody about their work?
Oh, man, that's tough. I mean, I think Jane has a lot more experience with this than I do, but I guess I would, you know, try to find something that I can connect with on them, something positive that I can start with and go from there. But I don't know. It's kind of a mystery to me in a way. I mean, I think Jane probably has a sort of a system or like a way of going through it that sort of makes sense. But for me, with my limited experience, it's I think it would be quite improvisational.
I think it is improvisational to me, and you have to respond to what you see. I've been in many crit groups, and most of them are not just all photography based. Almost probably every single crit group I've been has been mixed media artists, and painters, and sculptors, and to me that's super valuable. I think it's very important for artists not to just get into one niche. But that said, it's like, I'm not a huge fan of abstract painting, and we'll do a crit with an abstract painter, and it's like I'm trying to find meaning in there, and I'm trying to, it's that fine line of, you want to push the artist to understand why they're making the work that they're making. You want to help and guide them to make better work, but maybe somebody just says, oh, I just love this color purple. It's really hard. So it's a fine line to be positive and supportive and offer guidance, but also be challenging and critical because it's a critique, to question their motivation to just take that favorite color you like because it feels good and it goes nice over the couch. So it's a sensitive area.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the people who do these, who are reviewers at these, big blockbuster critiques, I think they're heroes or something. I mean, to have to look at that much work and to maintain enthusiasm for 2-3 days, that's got to be really challenging.
I would think so.
I would think so too. Thank you so much for the conversation, and thanks for participating here on the Crit House.